Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm joined by a special guest and ever wonderful person of the Redpill, the only person who isn't a homosexual, it seems, Mr. RedHawk himself. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me on. This will be a fun discussion, and we can talk about all sorts of drama and our favorite blue-haired cuck Smurf as well. We can rag on him a little bit.
Indeed, yes, we can. But of course, if you're not hyper online involved in the Red Pill space, can you kind of explain what this whole drama is about and who started it?
Um, well, I guess you could probably say that there's a lot of guys who are trying to get into the manosphere right now, from all different corners of the internet. They're trying to get a piece of our pie and jump in on the discussion. A lot of these, I guess it's called like panel podcast shows, like Fresh and Fit, Just Pearly Things, whatever. All these kinds of podcast platforms are just hopping on the Fresh and Fit train basically, and trying to get a piece of that pie. And as a result, you've got characters like Sneako, that fucking dude, and the blue-haired cuck himself, Destiny, chiming in on things. And this has been going on for a couple of weeks, pretty hardcore, maybe last like 2 or 3 weeks or so. People have been reacting to Rollo Tomasi's viral tweet that went out a couple of weeks ago. And it's just a complete, absolute clusterfuck. And I wish all these people would just go away and leave this space, because they don't know what they're talking about. They've been here for 5 minutes. They know nothing of the material. They know nothing of the players involved. They know nothing of the history of the space or any of the terms that they're using. And it's just a complete clusterfuck. And I can't stand any of it.
Indeed, it seems that these Twitch childs seem to just like come on. This is like the new thing. This is probably because they figured out this is the best grift to get onto, as it is still booming,
Well,
especially
yeah.
with their
Well, we
audience.
could dissect that a little bit as to so why is the red pill space, the manosphere, whatever you want to call it, why is it, I guess, I don't want to call it uniquely, but why is it positioned to be a place where it's very easy to grift off of? Well, it's kind of in two parts. One, it's simply that the number one, want and desire of men in all times and all places is to fulfill their sexual needs, to fulfill their sexual strategy. And combination with that is there are so many guys in this day and age that are just completely lost and have no idea where to start. Whether it's being raised by single mother homes, whether it's been raised in the gynocracy, whether it's, deadbeat dads, or, like they didn't get very much masculine instruction from their parents at home, whatever it is, there's a lot of guys that are just starting at basically square one here. And as a result of that, it's very, very easy to trick these guys and to get them to, basically fix all your problems and become a high power, high value, masculine alpha dude that suns his balls for $59 and buy it off my Gumroad course, and this will fix you. So there's a lot of that going around because it's a market that's ever expanding, and it's just no barrier to entry for, guys who should be giving advice to people or pointing people in the right direction to fix themselves.
I also feel like some of the formats of these shows that have, like, just sprung up out of nowhere, like whatever, um, and Fresh and Fit to a lesser example, kind of they thrive off this drama to get views
Oh
and
yeah,
clicks, which is
yeah.
understandable.
Yeah. They're red meat podcast shows. They're there for drama. They're there for, engagement bait. They're there for, the fight between content creators and everything like this. They're there to be outrageous and say absurd things and things like this. And yeah, they thrive off this kind of stuff. One of my biggest gripes with, the Fresh and Fit guys, and not to, throw shade about the guys themselves. I mean, like, I've got a lot of guys who have been on the show that I'm, in close contact with, and they have nothing but high praise for the guys as people. But their brand itself, I think, is just completely toxic and is entirely net negative for actually helping guys to get where they want to be. And I think a large part of this is that their entire marketing strategy thrives off of keeping men in the anger phase. And the anger phase, for those of you guys that aren't familiar with this, is the concept of when you are getting down your red pill journey, or, male action plan, as we like to call it. Often guys will like default to the emotion of anger, which is the default emotion for men. and they get into this space where they're so pissed off, not necessarily about women, even though it comes out that way. That's how it's expressed. The anger is actually at the missed opportunities and the time that they wasted in this old paradigm that they have now basically, seen the wizard behind the curtain, Wizard of Oz style, and see basically that all they were fed was bullshit. And they're basically, some of them are in their late 20s or their 30s, or maybe you just got divorced or whatever the hell it is. And you just realize that you had so much time that was wasted in this new paradigm, and you wonder about like what might have been. And that's where guys really get pissed. And a lot of these podcasts will thrive off of that anger and keep you in that phase, basically to be pissed off at everybody else outside. It's pissed off about the women mostly. Look at these dumb bitches. They're saying stupid stuff. They have unrealistic expectations, yada, 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 whatever the hell it is. It's just designed to continue to get you to tune in to see what this dumb bitch is saying, and it's just not productive because it's actually not going to what you want. It's entertainment, but, go get entertainment from elsewhere. Go watch Futurama or some shit, if you want entertainment.
And I feel like they've kind of spawned a bunch of copycats who have now realized that this format is very successful because
Oh,
there is a
yeah.
bunch, as we've seen in the data, like there are hundreds of millions of lonely men now who are just like prime demographic for the space. So there's just this massive like untapped market for this content to kind of give them what they want. However, it's not very good for them.
No, it's
I
not.
think.
I mean, it's giving them what they want because nobody else is appealing to this demographic of men. And I do feel for these guys to an extent. Like everywhere you go. I mean, I always get a kick out of when like all men are in all levels of our society. Like men are just blamed for literally everything. From the second you come out of the womb, you're part of the patriarchy. And I just laugh when I see like some of these like young Zoomer guys that are like 18, 19, 20 years old who have basically been blamed by the school system their entire lives for, keeping the women down. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like these guys have had no semblance of power in their entire lives. Women have been running things for basically 3 generations now. It's like these guys, were just sandbagged from the absolute start here, and you're still going to blame them for everything. So I do sympathize with these dudes like quite a bit. It's like, yeah, you were sold a false bill of goods and you got really bad programming and it really does suck. But at the end of the day, you just have to come to the realization that you, as a guy, it's your responsibility to fix your situation because you're not a blonde with big boobs. So no one's going to come and take care of you. And that's just a simple fact of the matter.
Yeah, there's this huge proportion of this demographic who are just bitches essentially, because like essentially life is going to be inherently harder as a man because you don't have an ass or boobs for number one, and so you will always be treated shit. No one was going to give you special favors unless you were rich, which is top 1%. So not even really realistic for most men.
Yeah, I mean, well, the thing about this is like men in all times and all places are judged by their competency. They're judged by what they do and what they are. And you're just a lot of guys will complain about this, and it often comes from the feminine kind of world that we're living in and the education they get from such a young age. Like I see this a lot when guys like come and talk to me, and they're very concerned about like there's so much to unpack here, but like back to what I was talking about, how these guys will like thrive on keeping guys in the anger phase and keeping guys concerned. Like if you watch like a shitload of fresh and fit content, you basically will program your brain to thinking that every single girl that you run into the street is some kind of hoe that's just going to take you for your money and is just looking to take advantage of you and things like this. And they're Machiavellian geniuses, when really that's an extreme minority of women. And most women are kind of dumb as shit. And they really are just not capable of taking care of themselves and running things. They just run around like chickens with their head cut off all the time. They're kind of just like the most responsible child in the room, as opposed to this Machiavellian genius. And when you guys like overindulge in this kind of content, it just comes out in your attitude when you're like dealing with the women and such, and it just comes off as really, really unattractive. So you shouldn't be like thinking at every single turn, like, oh, I'm gonna, make fun of this bitch and hold her accountable, and she's lesser than me and stuff like this. And it's like, yeah, should you go into a relationship thinking that the woman is not equal to you? Yeah, obviously, but that doesn't mean you need to go running around and, shoving her head in the toilet or some shit, like putting her down all the time. That's ridiculous. Like the carrot is infinitely better than the stick in most circumstances.
Exactly, and then you have this new group kind of coming in to bring in this other perspective, which is just left-wing retardation with the blue-haired Smurf, who I'm
Oh,
not
yeah.
quite sure why he's been allowed into the space, but
Well, we could thank
we
Fresh and Fit for that, for bringing him on their show the first time, which I don't know, it's maybe like a couple months ago now or something like that. I don't keep up with too much of their stuff anymore, but I do remember like that's basically how he got on the radar. And last night, it was him. Well, it was Destiny, Sneako, Mike Sartain, and Roll Tomasi were on the Fresh and Fit podcast for a debate last night. At peak, they had something like 40,000 live viewers, which is like double what Tim Pool gets. So that just goes to show you like the kind of audience that these guys can generate these days, which is pretty impressive. I sat down and watched it. I regret watching it because like nothing of it was just a complete waste of everybody's time. Like Destiny just argues like a woman. Every single one of his points that he makes is just to justify his own cuckoldry. And just say that like women are only attracted to like beta providers, which is just obvious bullshit. If anyone actually goes out into the field and has spent any amount of time with the women in any capacity, they just know this is bullshit. But because Destiny is an internet leftist debater, moron, just everything has to be backed with like peer-reviewed studies, and it's such a feminine way of arguing. Like you just got to appeal to authority for literally everything. It's like it's honestly like trying to get a study for saying like the like common sense shit basically, and it's just infuriating to listen to.
Yeah, it's not very productive. However, it is hilarious because both of these guys, these drag guys or whatever, Sneako, they're all cucks. Like they're like former homosexual porn, porn cucks, like smut. These types of guys, these like losers essentially.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just like all you got to do is just get enough eyes on screen and just continually to churn out like a new audience from place to place. And like people see this all the time. Like it's very rare for people once they subscribe to you to unsubscribe to you. It's not something that a lot of people do, especially on places like YouTube or something like that. So when you subscribe to somebody, you don't necessarily like watch their content or anything like this, but it's just a way for you to basically generate clout. So all you got to do for a lot of these guys, and definitely like in Sneako's case, they just move from topic to topic, from absurd thing to absurd thing, and just like pick up like a couple like 10,000 followers from this area, and then they just move on to something else. And they're basically banking on that like 80% of those people are going to stay. And that's essentially what they do with everything. So like Sneako like weaseled his way into like Red Pill talking points, and like weaseled himself into like hanging out with like Fresh and Fit and Andrew Tate and all these people and stuff like this. And I got no idea how the hell he qualified for that. I mean, the guy was caught faking receipts multiple times in his own DM groups. He would just literally take pictures of women off of Pinterest and then like blur their faces and then put that in his Telegram chat, claiming that like this was a chick he just banged. So like all these people are just complete fucking frauds, and and they also just know absolutely nothing about what they're talking about. Like, this is actually the first time I've ever listened to Sneako talk, was yesterday on the Fresh and Fit podcast on this debate. And the guy just has absolutely zero idea of what he's talking about in the red pill space. And it's just laughable to watch. It's like somebody who actually knows what the fuck, like the space is about and the people in it. It's hilarious to me to like, God, I wish I was in the room with him, because I just wanted to ask him. It was like, name me one guy, just name me one person in the red pill that was around more than 2 years ago. That's it. Name me one person who was an old poster on the old forums. Name me one book. Name me one piece of history. Name me one guy, one post. And I guarantee you this fucking guy couldn't do it, because he just doesn't know what he's talking about at all. And he's just fumbling over his words all over the place, trying to basically accuse the space of believing something that we don't, of saying that like, oh, well, the red pill says this. And it's like, bitch, what the fuck are you talking about? Like the red pill doesn't say jack shit. Like we're not like some kind of club where we pay memberships and member dues here or anything like this. It's just a loose confederation of dudes who have been swapping notes and having a positive male identity, a masculine space. And the guy just wouldn't be able to point out any of that kind of stuff, because all he thinks the red pill is Fresh and Fit talking points.
And what's kind of been exhumed from this discussion is basically what these guys have done is like confuse the muddy the waters about basic definitions now, about like what is a high value man and like
Yeah,
the controversy surrounding
I
this.
hate that. I hate this discussion. I hate this discussion so much. And again, like everyone just like wraps around like the jargon and everything. And this is how like there's absolutely nothing of substance being spoken about here because you can see it. It comes in cycles, man. Like excuse me. You can see it like how the content is generated and how the churn is made. So essentially what you have is okay, let's go back just for example, like 2 or 3 years ago, right when Fresh and Fit were first popping off was around like March or February of like 2021. So a little over 2 years ago now is when they first like really started popping off. And back around that time, you still had characters like Kevin Samuels, who was still alive. And he was kind of the guy that really like put forward this, concept of like the high value male, which is basically just a new phrase from the term alpha male that we used to use back in the old Red Pill days and on the old Red Pill forums. And because like people, dislike the term or because they just need to churn market out a new term, they decided to go with the term high value male. And it's just such an amorphous term that basically means nothing. And everyone just injects their own fantasies, their own wants and needs onto that term and just basically grifts off of it. And everyone just fills in their own, placeholder terms for it, which is a reason why I don't like it, which is a reason why it's not really important to talk about too much. But anywho, so Kevin Samuels like pioneers this as an idea. And for him, it was something absurd. It was like you have to make X amount of money and sleep with X amount of women. And then Myron on Fresh and Fit basically took the same idea and then amplified it a bunch, because he's like, oh, well, it shouldn't be 30. It should be 50 girls you have to sleep with now to be a high value male. They're just like literally making things up, which is so fucking absurd. And then fast forward to a couple weeks ago when Rollo Tomasi uses the same term jokingly in a tweet. And he lists out like 8 or 9 things, whatever it was on his tweet. It's like the quickest way to being a high value male. And he listed off those things. And then basically what they did after that, the last like 2.5, 3 weeks, everyone from Pearl, from Sneako to Destiny to, Abba and Preach, whatever these other like weirdos that come around like into Red Pill spaces, they just basically now react for 2 weeks nonstop about Rollo's term. And they just like dunk on his term. They're not producing anything of value. They're not actually adding anything to the conversation. They're not actually talking about male sexual strategy in any way, any tactics that you can use, anything like this. They're literally just, dunking on him and attacking like Rollo for this tweet and not adding anything to the conversation. It's like, well, a real high value man has a family. It's like, okay, well, who the fuck are you to be telling like other men what they should or shouldn't be doing? Anonymous, grifter online. It's all just complete nonsense. And to anybody in the chat listening, you need to avoid this kind of stuff like the absolute fucking plague, man. It's just so unhealthy for you.
Yeah, it's gonna trip you up your mind, mess you up in your expectations. Honestly, it's also just a massive fucking waste of time to be having debates about what the correct definition of high value man is in these terms. I can't even think of a greater waste of time, quite frankly, when most of these people are overweight and haven't been outside in like a week.
Well, there's certainly that, but there's certainly that, like everyone should be like working on themselves and like improving a bunch more and not being concerned about random like e-celebrity drama and such like this. So there's definitely that. That's a part of it. But, the other thing is that it just tells me if guys are super obsessed with this term that you just haven't made it yet. You haven't internalized the material. You don't actually understand what the manosphere, the Red Pill, the RP space is about. If you are looking for approval from other men like Rollo as to what defines high value, then that just tells me you haven't made it yet. You haven't understood everything yet. You haven't internalized this material. You haven't actually established a frame for yourself. And it's just so easily broken when you're basically getting your inspiration from, like a random guy on the internet that you're never going to meet. Like you basically just swapped out God and just inserted like a random internet person as your God. And that's not what you should be doing. What you should be doing is you can have like role models and masculine figures in your life. That's totally fine. There's no issues with that. But you shouldn't be just, when somebody says jump, you shouldn't immediately say how high. You need to be thinking for yourself, like what you want out of your own life. And what you want out of your own life is going to be different than what I want. It's going to be different than what you want. It's going to be different than, what anybody online wants, because we're men and we all want different things out of our lives. And lucky for us as men, we get to craft our own, vision of the world that we want, because luckily for us, we are the ones who, rule the world, and it always will be this way. So you being in a position as a leader, there's disadvantages to that and there's advantages to that. A disadvantage being like your life is just always going to be more difficult than a woman's, and it's just a simple fact of the matter. But the advantage of that is that you get to create what you want. For a woman, basically, she has to attach herself to a man who's going somewhere, and that's her strategy for life. Which kind of sucks, because if you pick wrong, if you're bad at choosing, which a lot of women are, it basically just entirely screws over your life. So as a dude, at least you're the captain of your own ship. So I mean, take responsibility for it, which may suck at certain points, but I'd much rather have the control over my own life, the successes and the failures, than just basically scratching off a lottery ticket, which is basically what women do.
And speaking of our favorite Smurf here right now, let's check out this guy.
Oh my god, yeah, that's Misha's meme. Oh my god, the guy's so funny. Yeah, he's a good friend of mine. Yeah, you made that one. Is so perfect. Yeah.
Well, I feel like we should talk about cuckoldry because this guy, like, I think he's deeply subversive actually, because this is actually normalizing this idea, especially among loser men who let themselves get bossed around by women. But this is actually acceptable. To become this, which it is not. But I don't know. This guy may actually think it's a fetish for him. Quite honestly, I don't know.
the thing is like, it's just so absurd we've even gotten to this point that this guy was even given a platform to talk on these subjects. It's just laughable to me that anyone takes him seriously on this topic at all. Like there's video upon video of his girl being extremely handsy with other dudes online on all sorts of places, and not just his own house, which is what recently came out, but from events like political events like politicons and things like this, where she's getting handsy with other people in the audience and things like this. It's just like, dude, why is anybody taking this guy's opinion seriously on any of this crap? It's literally just because this guy started the entire online leftist grift sphere of like Andy Worski, like blood sports kind of shit, and he's just kept a following for this long that somehow people think he's smart and think he's intelligent, and he's just not, and it's just people should not be taking this guy seriously at all on any of these things. No, we're not having a discussion. We're not having arguments. We're not getting drawn into your stupid 47 fucking studies that you just pulled out of your ass. And you can find a statistic for literally everything.
Actually, being a cuckold, reduces the risk of prostate cancer.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, there's gonna be you can literally make a study for anything. So it's just it really just is not even worth like discussing and talking about. It's like no one's minds are going to get changed here. This guy is still going to do his thing. He's still going to let his girl be railed by other fucking dudes.
By check out the thumbnail.
Yeah. That's and funny enough, that's Abba from Abba and Preach. It's another fucking content creator that showed up in his house. That's who that black guy is right there, and he's kind of a scumbag too. But that's a different fucking story, and I don't really care to get into that. But yeah, so. Again, it's just this guy is weaseling in on the red pill space and doing streams about it and dissecting things and pulling up like a bunch of his own psychology studies to counter Rollo's psychology studies and things like this. And it's just like I take much more of like my buddy Ryan Stone's position on this, and Ryan knows all the psychological and sociological and evo psych studies as well that much of our red pill is backed with. The work of like people like Jeffrey Miller, David Boss, Marty Hazelton, Rob Henderson, Steve Stewart Williams, all these guys, even Gat Sad to an extent. But yeah, he knows all this kind of stuff too. But quite frankly, it's not important for most guys to be knowing that, and because number one, like, you shouldn't be autistically breaking down relationship dynamics with your woman. It's not what it's for. They're not for that. Have these kinds of autistic discussions with other men if you really want to have them. But ideally, it's not necessary for you to know this kind of shit. It's far more important for you to know what a green amplify is, what a covert contract is, like all these kinds of things you're actually going to use in your everyday relationships with women. What push pull is, what negging is, what cocky funny is, what fogging is, all these kinds of tactics that are actually helpful to you, instead of just memorizing the latest statistics out of Jeffrey Miller's latest book.
Yes, because anybody could do this, and this was a critique in like 2015 of debating leftist. The leftist brings out a stupid statistic that backs up their argument in bad faith, and nothing actually happens except donations and drama.
Yeah, and it's all just like circular discussion too. It all just like circles back to the same point. Like someone counters a point, the leftist comes back and fires out some ridiculous study, to justify their stupid point that, it's only an academic could come up with a study to fight like common sense, basically. And of course, like nobody's minds are changed, and everybody just sides with whoever like their side was at the very start of it. And it's like, yeah, it's just so horribly unproductive. And honestly, I have a lot of respect for AA in this regard when he just says, I don't do debates. And to be honest, like he's right. Like why are we doing this? Nobody's minds are going to get changed. Nobody's acting in good faith. The audience is literally just going to side with, their guy anyway. It's basically just team sports. So if you're going to have discussions with people to try and change minds, like do it when you're in the same room, do it with like other people that are like your intellectual equals. And you'll just be far more productive with that. But this ridiculous like online back and forth stuff is just so unbelievably unproductive.
No, but it gets the clicks. It gets the
yeah, that's why they do it.
From all of the online cockroaches, basically. The vast majority of loser men, basically, who can consume content that expresses some of their anger and frustrations at the current society, which is justified, however unproductive, and ultimately harmful for them.
That's the problem, like as to why I have such a gripe with like fresh fit people. Again, like no hate on the guys. I'm sure I'll meet them at some point, but I really do not care for their brand, and I think it's very, very destructive. I don't think it's helpful for most dudes, and I think you're gonna have much better use picking up like Ryan Stone's like most recent book, and like following the Red Pill sidebar stuff, which has been around for over a decade at this point, and getting yourself in the gym and just talking to like your waitress or your cashier when you go to the grocery store next time. You're going to find far more use out of that than watching, the 10th version of Fresh and Fit After Hours when a chick can't name 5 countries. It's like, I don't really fucking care if a chick can't name 5 countries. I care if she cooks, cleans, is compliant, and sucks my dick. It's just not what they're for, So if you get a smart one, that's awesome, but it's not a requirement. Like you can make a chick smart. It's ridiculous to try and hold them to male standards, which is what they try and do on that show all the time. And that's my biggest gripe with it is like, why are you taking women seriously? You shouldn't be. It's just so unproductive for you. Like when you get into an actual situation and just try and like rationalize your way into a girl's pants and say, well, I'm a guy who is strong and has money, and I'm a good bet for you on your long-term survival of your children. So therefore you need to, come and have sex with me right now, and everything's gonna be happy ever after. And it's like, no, women don't think that way. They don't operate that way. It's all about feelings. It's all about emotions. You need to make the chick feel good. You need to make the chick feel, like she's special and all this kind of stuff. Just like autistically rationalizing with her is never going to get you what you want. And so often I see this kind of behavior from dudes who are just like, well, according to this study, women needed men for survival and needed men for protection. And I'm the man and you're the woman. So therefore you need to shut up and do what I say. It's like, ugh, my God.
Yeah, it's extremely misguided and unproductive with most of these men, quite frankly. Which is why their shows are booming, and they bring in the donos, right?
No,
like whatever just kind of blew up out of nothing. I mean,
it just basically it was kind of like Fresh and Fit light. Like it was like a little bit nicer. The guy host what the hell's his name? Like Brian or something is the guy's name on whatever. It's like a nicer version of Myron and Fresh. And that's why he popped off. It's funny. I knew we reached absolute rock bottom with this when I saw Michael Knowles, from the Daily Wire go on the whatever podcast. I saw that go off. It's like, oh no. The end times are truly here. It's like, hello, fellow kids. We're gonna talk about the Christian path and the conservative case for marriage. As he's literally talking about your OnlyFans hoes.
Yes, but however, the crux of this whole thing was actually one of the points in Rollo's tweet, and it was specifically point 2 or 3. I forgot which one, off the top of my head, and it was regarding vasectomies.
Yeah. So like, I did a brief video about this a couple days ago that people could go and check out, and I kind of dissected this a little bit more, but I'll reiterate the same points here. Is that number one, the tweet was obviously the tweet was bait, clearly, and it got, what is it now, like 10.1 million interactions last I checked, which was 2 days ago. So it's easily one of the most high traffic tweets that Rollo's ever had. So good for him on that regard. But the other thing is kind of like what I was pointing out earlier. So number one, it's the internet. Don't take everything so seriously. Number two, even if you were to take Rollo's tweet at 100% face value, even though you shouldn't be, again, because it's the internet and people like to troll all the time, why are you taking your advice for your life from one tweet from a guy who has a big following online that you're like never going to have an interaction with in your real life? And this is kind of what I was getting at earlier when I was talking about how people just haven't really made it and haven't internalized this material yet. If you're still looking for a shepherd, like you're not a sheep, you're not in search of a shepherd, you're a predator, and you are out to forge your own way in this world. If you disagree with Rollo, that's fine. If you agree with him, that's fine as well. But you shouldn't be like negatively spurging out and reacting to everything like some woman, when you see something online that doesn't jive with you properly. You shouldn't have your worldview and your frame shattered so quickly and so easily, like so many people were in our circles that were just reacting to this and dogpiling on it. I have disagreements with the whole vasectomy argument, but you also notice that I didn't spurg out when I saw Rollo's tweet about it. I didn't even react to it. I remember exactly when I saw it. I was on a train because I just got back from a trip abroad. I was on a train from France, from Paris to Frankfurt, Germany, and I was just casually scrolling through Twitter, and I literally saw it maybe 10 minutes after he tweeted it. And I saw it, I read it, I was like, okay, moving on. I didn't even react to it. And that's what you should be doing if you disagree with something. You shouldn't be, losing your shit about like the red pill says this and Rollo's telling people to do this. You shouldn't be perceiving absolutely everything online as some form of self-advice or self-help or something like this. It's just a very feminine way of looking at things. So that's my first objection to it. Right on the face of it. Like, don't take everything so damn seriously.
Yeah, I just feel the bigger problem is that for specifically this affects the West, but in America in particular, is that most men grew up without a dad. So the feminine point of view and way of reacting is all that they know and their point of reference. So that's kind of why these things are just like happen normally. I mean, I'm sure they've happened in history, but not to the scale. I don't think that that's ever happened. The amount of just like leftover boys. I forgot what the specific term. Peter Pan syndrome.
Yeah,
Types.
yeah. I guess yeah, you could say that.
With overreacting in an emotional way, basically.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to convey here.
Yeah, as my buddy Ryan likes to say all the time, men raised as defective women, and yeah, I very much agree with him on this point.
But also the point, about jumping off a bridge is like, okay, well, somebody gives bad advice or you disagree with it. So what? You don't have to, it's, why are you taking it seriously then? If I said go jump off a bridge right now, you complain about that. That's kind of dumb. It's overreaction. You're missing the point.
And the other thing about that tweet, and Rollo's no dummy. He's been in this space for over 20 years. He knows what the fuck he's talking about, and he chose his words very carefully in that tweet. And what everyone was up in arms about, he didn't say the most honorable. He didn't say the most honorable way. He didn't say the best way. He didn't say the preferred way. He said the quickest way to become high value. And basically, in all of his points they listed out, he's correct in that regard. But again, everyone was attaching moral prescriptions to this list of things. And basically, the whole point of the tweet essentially is like, okay, this whole concept of high value that everyone is throwing around, basically, this is what you're going to sacrifice if you want to be like this high value dude that everybody online says is high value. So if you're going to be one of these spurgs that is attached to this term, well, this is what you have to do. And if you don't want to have to do that, that's fine. That's your own fucking choice to make. It's not a prescription like that you have to do this. And also the other thing is, even if it was, it's like, again, why do you care if you're not like high value in Rollo Tomasi's eyes? It's so weird to me. It's like the guy's got a massive fucking following. He's never going to know who you are personally. You're never going to have an interaction with him at any point in your life. It's just so absurd to me that people are all up in arms about this. It's very, very strange.
No, it seems like more of a drama bait. type content feel, which is what these shows get their feel off, which is understandable.
Well, yeah, I mean, like had Rollo not tweeted that, he wouldn't have had a stream with Destiny and Sneako and Mike Sartain yesterday, which got up to 40,000 views, like at the peak, which is like double what Tim Pool gets. So, like it obviously worked, for what they were trying to do with it, and kudos to him for that. But yeah, it's just, and well, what I like about this kind of stuff is to the guys that are switched on and the guys that know what's going on, you can kind of see the kayfabe and look through it and see what's actually important. And my buddy Ryan talks about this all the time when basically like it's basically well known in the like the red pill circles that maybe 10 to 15% of the guys are actually going to put in the work and actually change and do what they need to do to become successful and whatever it is that they want to do. So basically, like these big giant flameouts that you see and the big like red meat content and the funnel marketing and things like this, it's basically just a way to finance the 15 to 10% guys that actually want to do the work. So all the other spurgs that come in and just like adopt like the red pill jargon and everything and don't understand the material and are just there to make fun of women and dunk on the hoes and dunk on Destiny or dunk on Sneako or dunk on Rollo or whatever and just throw in some money every now and then. Like those guys are the ones that are financing the actual work that's getting done. So that's fine. Like they're always going to be there. So you might as well make money off of them. And that will actually give, the guys that want to do the work and the guys that want to be successful, that it's just a way for us to basically get financed, so, and that's basically it.
Yeah, they're basically like super chats in real life.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's what they are, though. The real life personification is super chats, and that's kind of all they'll really be known for. Sadly, for most of these guys, these online Melvins or whatever term you want to use.
It
changes every week.
I mean, I say it all the time on Twitter that most guys aren't going to make it, and that's 100% true. And basically, it's not really so much as it relates to like the world puts you in a shitty place. It's just most guys just aren't going to change. Most guys aren't going to do the work. Most guys aren't going to be introspective and say to themselves, yeah, I've got issues that need to be sorted, and I'm actually going to admit that I have problems and admit that I need help, and I'm going to, make the changes necessary to, be what I want to be. And that takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of guts. And most guys just aren't going to want to do it. And to be honest, like as long as you make that decision rationally, I mean, there's plenty of like rational, like MGTOW guys or black pill guys that just decide like, oh, I'm just going to check out of everything. And they make the choice for themselves. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I got, no issue with that. You got my blessing, but what I take issue with is guys who, like just don't even try and don't even make that decision like rationally. They just like end up in this place and like, oh, like woe is me and everything like this. And, they never make that argument, that point where it's like, okay, well, in order for me to be successful, I have to work this many hours a week. I have to be in the gym this amount of time. And I got to talk to this amount of people. And that means that I don't have time to play video games. I don't have time to smoke weed. I don't have time to, sit on my ass and eat a lot of junk food. And so maybe you want to make that rational choice in your brain. Maybe those things are like more valuable to you, and that's totally fine if you make that choice. But when people are bitching and complaining without actually, making that rational choice, that's where I take issue.
Yeah, most certainly. The people who aren't going to change, whatever, who cares about them? It's more about the people that are convincible and that can and will change. With people who are giving bad advice, I think that's the main critique here, right? Is the audience here are finely influential young men who are going through not a great period in time of their lives here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of important that you give them good advice.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the argument, but at the same time, it's like if you're a guy who read Rollo's tweet and the very next day decided to go get a vasectomy, then like you're not going to make it anyway. Like it's, like you're already the kind of person that isn't actually going to, make it. You're just going to be one of the guys that was lost through attrition. And there were always guys who were this way throughout all of history. In certain points in history, we had attrition rates of close to, 40, 50, 60% of dudes, depending on the circumstances of war or disease or things like this. I mean, like the average, like throughout history, the male attrition rate somewhere around like 12 to 20%, like somewhere around there is guys that just like don't breed. And it's just how it's always been, so if, fortunately for us, in this day and age is that the competition is just getting weaker and weaker and weaker. You know, I mean, like, what is it now? 62% of American males are overweight or obese. You know, so like already right there off the bat, you know, like that bar is already set pretty low. You know, so that's the thing. Like, you can either look at that as like, oh, it's super blackpilling, like everything's screwed, or you can think of it as like, wow, it's really like the best time in the world to be a go-getter. And I would be much more happy for guys to look at the latter as opposed to the former. You know, like to look at the white pill and things.
Yeah, it's never been better for people who actually put in the work. It's never been better for them. And it's never been worse for people who are make excuses and play Call of Duty and eat Cheetos on the basement. You know.
Yeah, I mean, like, quite frankly, it's like kind of fascinating how easy it is these days if you make the right choices and you just like don't fuck up.
It's actually so hard because it's so easy, honestly. Because life is too easy. It's too easy to survive, quite frankly, and that's why it's
Well,
hard.
yeah. I mean, there's definitely that, but like also it's like um, we're basically living in such a unique point in history where like people can get a degree in a certain field, like, I don't know, like accounting, engineering, something like this. You just like don't buy into the leftist bullshit about any degree is a good degree. Like, get yourself a good or computer science or something like this, and you can basically be making six figures and work from home basically at the age of like 22, which, you know, is like an obscene amount of wealth for that age and at that point in time in your life in history. It's nuts. You know, like I was talking to Ryan Turnipseed about this, funny enough, a couple of weeks ago, and it was just amazing to me how like Turnip has been listening to content like this since he was in his early teens. And I was like, my God, if I was in his position and learned about this kind of stuff, you know, when I was his age, like, oh my God, I would be light years ahead of where I am now, just because of like, you know, compound effects, you know, like it's just how it goes. But yeah, I mean, you have an extremely bright future ahead of you if you are like ahead of the pack, so to speak, on these kinds of things. And more of our guys are at a younger age, which is a good thing.
No, it is quite white pill, and that's how future elites come by.
Oh
It's
yeah.
not the majority who ever decides things. Frankly, 90% of the NPCs you see out there, these 600-pound people, are like, you know, the fat, overweight people. They're irrelevant, and they've kind of always been irrelevant
Well, yeah, I
for the
mean, like
people.
all you gotta do is just like look at the average. Like, it's so funny. Like, my buddy Sixer, who comes on my streams every now and then, we've been friends for a very long time, and he and I are both very switched on to the RP stuff. And when we get into like when we actually meet up IRL with like groups of our friends and things like this, or we're at like a wedding or something like this, or whatever it is, and people will just be like casually talking about their relationships and things like this, and they're just so horribly dysfunctional because nobody knows what the fuck they're doing. And it's amazing to us when the two of us just can lock eyes in a conversation and we know what's up. We hear like like how a girl talks about her boyfriend or her husband, or we listen to a guy like refer to his girl like as their partner or something like this, and we just like roll our fucking eyes. We're like, oh, okay, yep. And you just realize how like much, you know, dysfunctionality is out there right now. It's really staggering.
I think Joshua Hamm has a good point about the she economy, right? Banks forecast 45% of women will be single and childless. That means most men will also be single and childless. It's going to get really
Yep.
ugly out there. Oh, yes.
Oh yeah. Yes. Well,
These
well,
awfuls are the prime demographic for the regime, also.
oh yeah. And but like again, like there's so obviously that's very black pilling on a civilizational level, and that's 100% true. But it's also very white pilling just on like an individual level. You know, it's like, okay, well, if the competition is just gonna, you know, get addicted to drugs and alcohol and you know, laziness and sloth basically, and just pray for, you know, like UBI basically. And if you're just like a little bit more intelligent than that, you know, you could really make some headway these days.
I wanted to ask you this question, though, since our favorite Smurf boy loves his cuckoldness and he kind of shows it out there. I thought, like, cuckoldness, though, was the fundamental, like, male fear. Like, that's kind of the ultimate thing, right?
Well, it certainly
So-
is from like an evolutionary standpoint. Evolutionary speaking, there's two things to this. Number one, um, females, as in like women, like human females. This is very rare in the animal kingdom or among mammals, where women do not have an outward facing estrus cycle. So what I mean by that is So you take a look at like deer, for example. The female deer, the doe, goes into heat a certain time of year, and she's very open and flamboyant about it. You see this in all other mammals as well, where certain times of year they're fertile, and there's like a whole breeding season attached to it. Humans don't do this. Women go through a cycle every time of the month. They have no like outward facing features that really establish that, and like no like outward facing sexual characteristics that are really easily identifiable for this. It's more of like a mental kind of thing. Like they'll start to behave different ways. They'll put on different clothing. They'll wear different earrings, those kinds of things. So there's that. So because like you don't necessarily know like when your girl is in heat, that's kind of speaks to the male like lizard brain that I gotta lock this girl down because I don't know when she's in heat, so I don't know when someone else is fucking her, so I don't know when like the child is gonna be mine. And that's the second part of this of the issue with the cuckold thing is that the guy before the invention of DNA testing, essentially, there was no way for you to know like if the child was yours. And think back to Game of Thrones. Everyone's watched Game of Thrones. Like there's no DNA tests back then, so like when you get cocked, the only way you'd really know would be like facial characteristics or things like this. So the way to get around this for guys is basically to like really lock down this one chick to ensure like his best paternity. And this is why the male like revulsion on a lizard brain is to a girl who is like slept around a bunch or has outward facing like hoish tendencies. Like that's a bad bet for paternity. It's a bad bet for me to know if the kid is mine. Well, because the woman is always going to know the kid is hers because it comes out of her body. And for the guy, it's just not the case. So we have to have different strategies to cope with this simple fact. So yeah, the cuckoldry is traditionally like basically the ultimate fear for guys, because like I've invested all this resources, into taking care of this child only to find out it's not actually mine.
Exactly, and we live in this time where pathetic, weak individuals like this I'm not gonna use the term this boy can kind of normalize this behavior, this weird sexual fetish.
Yeah,
And what do you think plays into that? Do you think like there's like some sort of sexual thing to it, like that this is thing? What do you think actually plays into this? Like,
well, I
why?
think there's I think there's a lot going on here. Number one, I think it's like cucking, like in the male sense, is almost like a male adopting like the female mating strategy, essentially, is what it is. It's like you've just become so feminized like in your brain that you're okay with like sharing a partner. And traditionally this is actually very common for women, especially in higher up classes, because of women's tendency for hypergamy, and that means dating up across the hierarchy. Because women want the absolute best genes for their child, that means they tend to date up in a hierarchy. And as a result of this, you would have, kings, queens, or kings, emperors, like so many of these like high status figures who would have multiple women, and the women would just happily share them, because it's like, hey, he's the best. He's going to be able to take care of the kids. I'm going to be taken care of, but I just have to share him sexually with other women. But, does it really matter if it doesn't really matter if I have to share them sexually if all my other needs are being met. And this is a calculation that a lot of women have made throughout history, and women will make now. I mean, you see this all the time. I mean, like look at like any professional athlete, any professional like movie star, anything like this. Like, yeah, they're running a rotation of chicks. Like there's pickup artist guys that'll do this. There's, I mean, like even like normal guys can do this. We call it like plate theory and spinning plates. It's just like, yes, there is something in like women's lizard brain that they're okay with sharing a guy if they view him as high status enough. And essentially, this is just what Destiny has done, but just in the reverse. Like, this girl is significantly more attractive than he is, in his own hierarchy, so to speak. Like, Destiny's not the best looking dude, but the chick he's with is an absolute smoke show. Like, everyone could easily see this. So he's kind of just adapted the like female mating strategy for himself. It's like, okay, well, if I just get a little bit of this, that's enough. It's like, okay. I mean, it's one thing. I will give, as much as I despise this character for all sorts of reasons, like, giving Vaush a platform and starting basically the entire online leftist sphere. So obviously he's no friend of mine and he's clearly an enemy, but I will give him some props in this regard. Destiny at least owns his shit, which is better than what like a character like Jack Murphy or Sneako ever does, where they just like hide their like cuckoldry basically. Or even a character like Mike Cernovich, who was into this for a little bit, but that's a different story. But yeah, so at least he owns it. So at least there's that. But you know, everybody else like goes around like secretly like tries to like hide it and everything. Like, yeah, even worse.
Yeah, that is true. That actually makes sense though. When you're in a weaker position and you have enough status or money, that you just adopt the female strategy so that you can justify saying, "Well, at least I get some pussy," you know. But
You see
yeah,
this
she,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. You see the same thing with like those horrible like polycules. Like you see these like pop up on Twitter all the time. It's like four dudes with like one like extremely mid like girl, you know, and like the guys are like also like extremely mid as well. Like, you know, like no like super duper like masculine like alpha looking dude is sharing his chick. It's just not how it goes. You know, like pick out like any of your like absolute top tier dudes, they're not sharing their women with other dudes. It's just, you know, the simple fact of the matter.
Yeah, sharing is something for the bottom of the scale, down
Yeah, it's
of
it's for
men.
bottom of the scale, and it's for women. You know, like women will share, but you know, like absolutely not. And the reason for this is because a huge part of like male status in the hierarchy is like access to beautiful women. And you know, like I mean, you see this all over the place. Like you see it in the Bible, like with King Solomon, where he had thousands of concubines that were his. You see this in ancient China, like the Forbidden City, where the emperor had, you know, hundreds and thousands of girls that were only taken care of by eunuchs. He literally would go so far as to chop off the balls of the other guys working in the palace, and they literally were not allowed to enter. You know, unless they, you know, were sterilized essentially. So yeah, or you look at a character like Genghis Khan, who 1 in 200 people have direct genetic lineage to him at this point, and the man was ruling over 1,000 years ago. So yes, this is just a simple staple of human history that is now just basically on full display because we have, you know, access to the internet.
I suppose that's a good thing because you can see kind of why you need to work so you don't become that, or you're reduced to that being
Yeah,
your only option.
yeah. I mean, like, Destiny can like fool himself all he wants, or like believe his own lie. Basically, again, a very female tactic, like just, you know, backwards rationalize like the position, everything, which is basically all he was doing in this debate last night. It was just 4,000 studies, one after the other, of basically just trying to make the claim that women are only attracted to beta male providers, which is absolute bullshit. Anyone who knows anything about women can tell you this is bullshit. Anyone who has spent a significant amount of time in the game can also tell you this is bullshit. And it's just also very simple for anyone in the chat to identify very quickly. It's like, okay, it's just obvious. If you go to the gym more, you're going to get more attention from the opposite sex. This is just an obvious fucking statement. You know, like your biggest bank account will attract women to you, but that's not like the attention that you're wanting. You know, like it's ludicrous.
And I think that's a very pertinent point about like this confusion around what it means to be this stupid term with high value male, right? We've kind of made it to kind of to where it's meaningless and kind of self defined by you. Is having tons of money doesn't automatically mean you're high value. Uh, you
Well,
could
here's
actually just be a beta male with lots of money.
here's the
That's
thing.
also
Like,
very
I,
possible.
I just don't even like even sitting on the term high value to begin with. 'Cause it's just like it's just an amorphous term. It just doesn't mean anything. You know, it's just like it's just gonna mean something different to somebody else. You know, like I see my buddy Robert Kuzlin is in the chat right now, and like yeah, he's a guy who has a massive collection of a bunch of nerd and geek stuff in his man cave that's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. You know, is that guy high value? He also has multiple kids from several different women. Like, you know, like is he high value? He certainly is to me. You know, he's a good friend of mine. The guy's an absolute badass. Robert, we'll get you back on the show soon, my friend. You know, on Culture Warriors. Jack and Megatron and I are doing it again this week. But yeah, so I mean, yeah, he's like you should be living in your own life in your own frame. And what is best for you is going to be best for other people. So, like, if Robert is happy with his life, fantastic. If I'm happy with my life, fantastic. If Rollo is, if somebody else is, even if Destiny is, it's like, okay. I mean, I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think people should be, you know, like taking after what Destiny is doing. But it's also not my fucking responsibility to being taken care of like every single guy that comes into my purview, my orbit. No, it's just can't do it.
Yeah, it's not worth it. Vast majority of men. But I think that's a very good point.
Yeah, so like basically just what I want to rest on here is like you guys just shouldn't be obsessed um about like all these terms and things like this. You shouldn't be, like wondering in your mind like, oh, is what I'm doing right now high value? Is what I'm doing right now beta? Is what I'm doing right now alpha or something like this? It's like no, like you should be thinking of, is what I'm doing right now getting me closer or further away from the goals that I want? And that is what you should be more focused about. If like there's these fucking goofballs on like Daily Wire, like Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh say like playing video games is like for fucking children. It's like if you want to play video games and it's not destroying your life, then go and fucking do it, dude. Like these clowns have absolutely no business telling you what you should or shouldn't be doing with your life. And when I talk about this kind of stuff, I often get a bunch of pushback from guys on our side of things that says like, oh, this sounds like commie subversion. This sounds like leftism. This sounds like individualism, which is what got us here. And my response to that is it's just, well, masculinity is literally individualistic. It's what it is. Like we are primarily solitary creatures as men. We're not communitarians like women are. Like you are a leader, and being part of a leader is like you get to craft on your own views and your own wants and desires onto the world and onto your own world. So would people think like to its hyper extent that that's leftism? Sure, but I don't really give a shit because I'm not having this argument with you. Like it's not everything that's individualistic is somehow a code for liberalism or leftism or this hellish world that we're living in right now. And if you think that way, I don't know what to tell you. Like this is where people get into like that stupid like right-wing socialism crap.
Yeah, it's like the boomers who call everything woke. It kind of just, the problem is people get attached to terms. And I think this is what we see. What we're getting at here is that we're all like fighting and having debates over fucking terms, over nebulous terms that like don't have any inherent meaning to them. Although maybe they did at some point, they don't now. So it's like the term racist, right? It doesn't mean anything. It's a nebulous concept from its very creation.
Yeah, all these kinds of things are. It's like I was saying earlier. It's like no, you shouldn't be a sheep. You should be a predator, and that's how you should be viewing yourself. You are a hunter. You are paving your way forward for whatever it is you want out of the world. I mean, like I don't expect anybody to be like a carbon copy of myself, and I wouldn't want people to do that. Like I'm a autistic dude just like the rest of us that got into right-wing politics and circles, and I'm a loudmouth online. I play video games. I hunt big game. I'm an amateur paleontologist. I mean, like it's all crazy. Like nobody should be, viewing exactly what I'm doing as high value or something else. It's not how you should be thinking.
Yeah, and there is something to be said about the highly autistic nature, especially of our population of the sphere. And I'll include the red pill also because, again, everything to the right of Karl Marx is right wing now. So
yeah, it's just people shouldn't be so locked into. Yeah, exactly. People shouldn't be so locked into terms. They shouldn't be so locked into like ideologies and things like this, or like groups or whatever it is. It's just like, hey man, like internalize your ideas, internalize your goals that you want for yourself, and just work towards them once you know what you want. And the other thing too is that you are entirely in control of your own life and your own direction, and you have 100% right to change your goals and your wants and your desires at the drop of a hat without any justification towards literally anybody. And there's nothing wrong with that. So if you go ahead and try something and it's not working out for you and you feel like you don't want it, change, and that's totally fine. I think there's this one last parting thing I'll say here before we wrap up is I think there's a lot of issues that a lot of guys have, again, from being racist, defective women, where they think that everyone is just autistically obsessed about them and their decisions and their choices in their lives. And it's such a feminine way of looking at things. It's a very solipsistic way of looking at things, thinking that everybody out there cares about you. And people will think that is like kind of like blackpilling. Oh, nobody cares. But really, it's a white pilling thing. Like, oh, nobody cares. So I could literally just go about and do what I want out of my own life, and nobody's going to be really stressed out about it. And the example I love giving with this to really drive this point home is everybody here is in a group chat with their friends. Everybody here is in, like a text chat, a Discord chat, whatever the hell it is. And in that chat with friends that you communicate with all the time, if somebody puts a link in that chat, whether it's to a meme, whether it's to a video, whether it's to whatever, the percentage of people who are actually your friends who even click on that link is minuscule. And everybody knows this, like, oh shit, nobody clicked on my thing. It's like, extrapolate that out into the real world. It's like everyone's going to forget about you basically no matter what you do, like 5 seconds afterwards. And you see this all the time with like internet drama or something. It's like, yeah, or even in the news cycle, it's like nothing happens because nobody cares. It goes in one year and out the other. So don't be afraid to go out and try some things. Don't be afraid to fuck up. Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to change your agenda to see, to the point where you see fit. All this stuff is totally fine.
Exactly. I think that's a very pertinent point to end this off. With that being said, Mr. RedHawk, do you think you'd like to show or kind of promote to the audience as we close out the stream today?
Yeah, I will. I'll just promote my my own channel, which you guys can find here on YouTube. We're doing some good stuff there. Man's Hour, my flagship shows on Thursdays. Check out the Old Glory Club. We've got a lot of really good stuff going on over there, and we got really big plans for this summer. We're gonna do some like live meetups and events and such like that. So be on the lookout for that. And then check out my Substack as well, Son of Orion. But thanks for having me on, man. This was fun.
Indeed, it was my pleasure. And if you did enjoy this conversation, please like and sub to my channel. This is always greatly appreciated. Remember, everyone, the light can't last forever, and we're going to win in the end. Have a good night.